In this video, what we want to look at is defining the root app component. Now, components are a huge part of Angular 2 because they're basically the blocks we use to build up and specify the parts that make up our app. Every component we create controls a portion of the screen or a view by defining a template that dictates what goes into that view. Now, just as every Angular app has at least one module, that being the root module, every Angular app has at least one component, which is the root component. To create that component, I'm going to jump into my app folder, and alongside my app module TypeScript file, I'm going to create a new file here. I'm going to give this file a name of app.component.ts and save it and open it. And so now we're good to go to get started defining our root app component. Within this file, let's paste in a bit of code here. And so you can see the very first thing we're doing is we're going to import the component module from the Angular core library because we're going to need it. And specifically, we're going to need access to the component decorator function. You can see on line 3, we're using the @componentDecorator to define our class here as a component. And when I pass in my configuration metadata here, you can see I'm passing in two specific keys. The selector key here that I've set to a string of my app, or my dash app rather, defines the HTML that we would type into our Angular application to have this component be recognized and rendered at runtime. The template key here, which we're setting to another string that you're going to recognize as an HTML paragraph that just says, "Welcome to our app," is what's actually going to be rendered within our component. Now, obviously, we can modify this template, but for starter's sake, we're going to keep it very simple. We have our selector, my app, and once we use this in our Angular application, Angular is going to know we're attempting to use our component, and our component, basically for the time being, is just going to render out a paragraph that says, "Welcome to our app." Finally, we're creating our app component at the bottom here on line 10. And right now we don't have any logic in it, but so that we can use this component elsewhere in our Angular application, we're making sure to export it using the export keyword. So now we have our very simple app component in place. What we want to do is save it, and then we want to actually make use of it right away in our root module. So jumping back into our root module TypeScript file, app.module.ts, the first thing we're going to need to do is import our component. So I can do that using an import line here. You can see app component corresponds to the class that we exported. And we're also making sure to point to the specific path to our component file. Now, what you'll notice here is there is no need to include the TS or the .TypeScript because that's going to be assumed for us. So the next thing we need to do now that we have access to our app component, is update our module declaration here. Jumping into our component metadata, I'm going to add two more keys here, declarations and bootstrap, and you'll notice each of them take values as arrays. The only thing we're setting up in each of those arrays right now is our app component. The declarations array is going to be used to list the components and any other Angular types that are going to be a part of this module, in this case our root module. And the bootstrap array we're going to use to provide a list of components that should be used as entry points into our application. Typically, this is just going to be the one root app component. So at this point, we've defined our app module, we've also defined our app component, and we've made sure that we have access to our app component in our root app module.